Welcome to Settlement. I'm Fen, and in this video we're going to be getting into Ark Survivors, Philosophies and all of that. This is going to be the introductory video to a series that will go through every single knowledge suite philosophy that has been released so far and build on it as other ones come out. It's kind of companion piece to the And You series that goes through settlement locations and the Dark Bestiary that goes through the monsters. Before we get into it though, just to cover stuff that's upcoming, the next Dark Bestiary will be on the Phoenix, probably next month will be when it's done and ready. Revisiting the Phoenix is always a delightful time. It takes a lot of sort of extra bits and pieces to cover everything, as it's had a lot of content compared to some of the other monsters, a lot of extra stuff. So, yep, Phoenix. When the Screaming God lands on the simulator, I'll be doing a review of that, video review of that pretty much straight away. A written review is also going to probably be coming out this month on the Patreon, and then on Board Game Geek as well. I've played through the campaign twice now with the Screaming God and the Parasite Queen, and I've also sat down and watched Trent, Big Dino Dennison, play through it as well. So I've played through it twice myself, formed my opinions, and then had a look at somebody else just to see other people's reactions. So that will be coming out. And if you've not seen it, I'd recommend you go over to Trent, Big Dino's website, YouTube channel, and check out his Kingdom Death playthroughs. They're always really fun and enjoyable, and one of my favourite sort of gameplay channels to sit and watch. So yeah. Okay. With all that said, last bit, the old call to action. So like, subscribe if you enjoy these and you want, to support them and help me improve the quality and do them more often, because it's a lot of work and effort and takes a lot out of me to record these videos. It's not easy. Then you can do that by the Patreon or Ko-fi in the link below. I especially kind of need, if you want to help out, I kind of need a tablet to be able to assist with my Kingdom Death playing due to various things. So that's something we're having to budget for right now. But most importantly, if you watch these and share them with other people and you that's, that it all helps. It all helps. It's a tough time for everyone. You do what you can. Anyway, so let's get on to Ark Survivors and Philosophies. This is a system that came about through the Gambler's Chest, but it wasn't part of the original pitch. Adam hit upon the idea during development of the Gambler's Chest and decided to roll it into everything. It represents a fork in the road for the game, and that means it has some benefits and it does have some sort of downsides to it. So what it is doing is it is replacing the whole aging and fighting art section of the system and giving us this new thing where survivors have an outlook on life, a philosophy, and that flavours how they interact with the world and how they develop and grow. And fighting arts are almost entirely replaced by these knowledges, which are effectively evolving fighting arts, Pokemon fighting arts. So that's kind of the brief overview of it. This video, I'm going to be going through all of the system. I'm going to be going through the what categories of philosophies there are, the collective cognition, which is the leveling up system for the settlement in regards to philosophies. We'll look at the forum location, the new events that are linked to it, and briefly look at some things that get changed as well. And then at the very end, we'll go through the starting knowledges. There's 4 knowledges that are given to your starting survivors every campaign, and we'll just talk about those to provide the framework for how I'm going to sort of be going through all of this in the future. If you don't have the Gambler's Chest, this is the one video in the series I'd say that hopefully is useful. I'm going to try and avoid anything spoilery beyond like stuff that's in the rulebook, and then the very sort of surface level kind of, if you were looking at the cards, this is what you'd see. I'll have everything sectioned up to allow you to timestamp skip around if you need to. I think the most spoilery portion I'll get into is I'll have to go through the collective cognition cards to explain the system there and how the settlement levels up its philosophies as a whole. And I'll show a couple of like just example knowledges without any real text on them, just to demonstrate different categories. But beyond that, this is kind of like, if you're wondering if Ark Survivors are going to be for you, this is my video that will cover that. I'm going to be as extensive as possible. So, I did say there's some like negatives and positives. We'll start with the biggest negatives, which is this is forked Survivor development. That means whenever a new expansion is created, the design team have to think about, what about fighting art survivors? What about philosophy survivors, Ark survivors? Arks and, I don't know, arts? It's just going to be awkward with my pronunciations, but let's call it fighting and Ark survivors. So they have to cover both, which is increasing the length of time of development. And they have to not just come up with these, they have to test them and look for any weird interactions that might occur. And like the fighting art deck is kind of wild in how it works, you know, with being so random, you never know quite what's going to get thrown up together. So they actually require, while they normally put like one fighting art in, maybe 2 or 3 for bigger releases, there's a lot of chances that they could create unintended things. And given the way that the player base is now split, it's less likely these things will get spotted by the players as well. So that kind of increases the development time. It also increases the physical amount of stuff in a box. We've actually seen that have an impact in the Screaming God. The box has a vignette in it. We don't get the vignette survivors. We get just one indomitable resource. We get no seed patterns. And the illuminated figures in that box, instead of being something like an encounter, which is what I was expecting and hoping for, they're a minion for the Parasite Queen. So when asked why they didn't put the vignette survivors in, there just wasn't enough room in the box. So, you know, and that's also a problem with like warehousing for a company. Stock sitting on shelves takes up space and costs money, because it's you have your warehouse and you have your shelf taken up with things, and that's a problem. And it becomes especially awkward when you think about the past expansions, because they're not compatible for Ark Survivors fully, because they weren't designed with those in mind. So, for example, People of the Stars is currently just terrible with Ark Survivors. That's going to be fixed in the future. Same with People of the Sun. They're getting their own specific philosophies of heliocentrism, I think, and Starbound, I believe are the names, if I remember correctly, which is great. But that's something that has to happen. That's what Campaigns of Death is needing to do, is it's got to go and look at all of these old expansions and retrofit them into this new model. And every future expansion has to do to both as well. For us, it's more stuff to store. I'm now officially on 3 boxes for my just like Kingdom Death cards and pieces, and that's 2 core boxes and a Gambler's Chest box, and I am kind of thinking I might have to get another Gambler's Chest box depending on what happens with Campaigns of Death and the other expansions that will be associated with the Abyssal Woods and Inverted Mountain. I'm not sure. We're obviously going to get some more boxes, but even then, space is getting really limited. I am struggling to fit my Kingdom Death stuff on my shelves without having to vacate other beloved games. So that's another thing to think about. Ultimately, as well, just from the pure player's perspective, you can only enjoy one lot of content per campaign. Fighting arts, you don't have Ark Survivors at all, with the exception of kind of Wanderers, but we're not going to be going into those particularly here today. I might do a video on all the Wanderers some point in the future if people want. But it's just basically not present. And if you play with the Ark Survivors, effectively the fighting arts aren't present either, because while you can get one secret fighting art at a minimal cost, it is a fight and a struggle to get a fighting art at all. And if you're thinking, well, that's not too bad, just remember that stuff like Leader, Rhythm Chaser, they're on like Leaders on Overwhelming Darkness and Rhythm Chasers on Innovation Card. These are things that are like fundamental parts of systems, and that we don't have a Rhythm Chaser knowledge, we don't have a Leader knowledge. I kind of think we should. And we have seed patterns that are asking for, like I said, like the Guidon Lance from the Nucleope is asking for Leader. Well, that means really if you want to unlock it, you need to play a campaign of just normal fighting arts until you unlock it and whatnot. But even then, that's no good, because it's a seed pattern. So if you want to play with it in an Ark Survivor campaign, it becomes really difficult. And that's this kind of thing. So there's pluses and minuses. Now, the big positive is I think that the Ark Survivor system is absolutely phenomenal. I actually wish that they had decided to complete the second Kickstarter and release a new game using this system, just so it would have its own space to breathe, because it's that good. But we can't really change the past. This is where we are. And for me, I don't really enjoy playing with our Ark Survivors now, because the key thing this does is it suddenly makes the survivors really matter. In normal fighting Ark campaigns, the survivors are mostly the mannequin that you hang the gear on. The gear is the bit that you do the build around, because it's the bit that you can customize and focus on and have some sort of direction in. The survivors, they're kind of a bit unpredictable and random through that system. You get some forms of smoothing like sculpture and romantic, but not a lot. And that is just noticeable. Ark Survivors, on the other hand, suddenly these survivors with their philosophy, they have a focus, they have a design, they have a kind of role that they're pointed towards, and so you get to build them, you get to select knowledges to a certain degree, you randomly unlock them, but there is a, as we'll see, system that lets you pick and choose a bit, which is really helps. And so suddenly we're no longer just building 4 engines to work together in the gear grids. We're building 4 pairs of engines, and we're combining our survivor engine with our gear engine, and everything just gets more powerful, which would be worth noting is a little bit of a negative, in that Ark Survivors put out huge numbers once you really get going, and some of the monsters, especially the older designs, do struggle with that, and even some of the newer designs can struggle as well with what Ark Survivors are capable of doing. They're kind of, everything we're seeing that's coming out is absolutely fantastic, but it's also pushing at the boundaries of what the Kingdom Death system for Monster is capable of. And you know, how much further can you push and creep everything? We don't know. It's a natural thing that happens, but eventually every game has to reckon with it. Arkham Horror and Marvel Champions and Ashes have all reckoned with it very recently. Magic has to consistently reckon with it. It's in a huge creep time now. Luckily, this kind of ball game, we can choose to not play with the parts that we find are too strong. I, for one, have almost entirely retired the King from my campaigns until it gets an update, because the King gear is just a little too pushed. So overall higher power levels, but the fun part of that is you get to push against harder monsters, and you're constantly encouraged to do that, to not spend your time killing and farming level 1s. You're encouraged to go against higher and higher level monsters. Okay, so that's more than enough preamble. Let's start walking through this and get into it. So we're going to begin with, just over here, the overall kind of stuff. So I'm not going to read all of these out. This is in the Gambler's Chess rulebook, but I'm just going to skim through the various bits. So first of all, when we add Arc Survivors, we do that at the very beginning of the campaign. We get first meal on Lantern 1 of the timeline of the Arc Settlement record sheet. We replace certain innovations and hunt events. We will take a little look at those in a moment. We have a different intimacy table, look at that as well. And we've got this Arc Survivor settlement board to hold the new decks. It's just a nice little bit of sort of table decoration, organisation, assistance. And we'll have new sheets for the settlement and the survivors. Now, in respect to which campaigns you can run Arc Survivors in, technically any of them, but as I mentioned, it's not a good fit for People of the Stars. It's a little rough in People of the Sun. People of the Dreamkeeper always requires Arc Survivors. You can see that right here, just here. And People of the Lantern fits fairly well. I think of all of them so far, it's my preferred place to play Arc Survivors, but of course that campaign has its own like quirks and eccentricities that can make things awkward, like the Hooded Stranger being sort of the primary one, and there's also some difficulty with timings in regards to the Watcher, but nothing major. So we're gonna go through all of this when we look at the sheet and the forum and etc, so we can just turn this page forward. We have a philosophy deck. This is constructed of core, starting, 3 tiers, and systemic. We'll look at those in a moment. The initial deck is our core philosophy, our starting philosophy, and 2 random tier 1 philosophies. So we only have 1 starting philosophy right now. We only have 1 core philosophy. We have 4 tier 1s. It's worth noting, if you play in People of the Lantern, you currently don't have a core philosophy, so you'll draw an additional tier 1, so you'll have the starting and 3 tier 1s. That's another reason I quite like it, because it's just there's more interplay. You haven't got the gambler's core philosophy always sitting there, and I'm not going to be around the bush. I think it's good, but I think it's kind of too strong. It really drowns out a lot of the other philosophies and knowledges at times, which is cool to have this central flavour, but sometimes you just want to let the other things breathe and see what they can do, and it's nice to have that. Every philosophy has its own little book. We'll go through the survivalism one a little bit to kind of just highlight, but I'm not going to reveal everything there. We still have Hunt XP milestones, but they're a little different. And we'll look at all of these things, tenant knowledges, neuroses, and ranks and stuff when we get into that. Over here we just got stuff that explains like how it works, but essentially once you reach Hunt XP2, the rank 1, when you return you'll ponder a philosophy, which means you'll draw a philosophy card that'll become your philosophy. You can, like alternate rules, you can like choose to pick, or you could be like, we're always going to have a different one each time, so no repeats until we've been through all the philosophies. Bunch of different ways you can customize that to suit what you like. And another thing is, you have to be a returning survivor to ponder, which is part of ranking up. So even if you sat in the settlement and got enough Hunt XP to reach, say, rank 2 or rank 3, you don't roll for them until you send that survivor out and have them as a returning survivor. It says returning survivors must ponder. We've got a breakdown of knowledges. I will look at this page and go through it briefly because it's really nicely done. As always, they have great explanations of everything here. So this is a philosophy. This is the tenet for survivalism. So this is one of the earliest philosophies. It's called tenacity. Top left here, this is how much it costs in Lummy. We'll look at that in a moment. This is the main text of how it works. I'm not going to read that out. Then we have observations. Observations are when you do this thing, you score an observation. When you score enough observations, your knowledge will interrupt gameplay, and you'll get a little cut sequence where it levels up. Unfortunately, unlike Pokemon, you can't bat it with a newspaper and tell it to stay cute. It is going to level up. An important thing about these is when a survivor levels up a knowledge, the card in the deck is replaced with the upgraded version. Even if that survivor passes away, it doesn't matter, the settlement gets to keep that. But any survivor who's got the original lower leveled version, they have to level it up themselves separately. They don't get to automatically upgrade. So there's a little bit of like, here you go, that's nice, but also tough luck for you happening. Knowledges are like fighting arts in that if you can't use fighting arts, you can't use knowledges, you can't even score observations in knowledges. There are two types of observations. Normal ones, which are advanced in blue, and dangerous ones, which I'll go through whenever we first encounter them, but like dangerous ones means there's some nasty consequences for leveling up. We have a knowledge deck, works like a fighting art deck, only it's significantly smaller and curated by your survivors and their age gains and whatever they level up and everything. Gaining knowledge is relatively straightforward. There's a few different ways it happens, most primarily via leveling or by purchasing it from the forum, but there are other methods. Whoops, I didn't mean to turn that quickly. So this is all talking about the bits and pieces I already went through on regards to like how knowledge levels up and stuff. There's the forum, which we will look at when we go through the leveling up of the the collective cognition deck, and then I think yes, great. That's everything I want to go through in the book here. There was one thing which I just wanted to cover now, so I may have skipped past it. Let's just get to it. It's about systemic pressure, and we'll look at it on the sheet. That's fine. Anyway, so Arc Survivor sheet. That's what I wanted to look at next, and then we'll look at the settlement sheet. So we have here. This is the first sort of big difference. Is we got 3 extra traits that we're covering. So systemic pressure is basically a negative modifier to your severe injury rolls. The higher your systemic pressure, the more lethal your severe injuries are likely to be. Torment is the same, but for brain trauma, so it'll reduce off your brain trauma rolls. And then we have Lummy. Lummy is it's basically like the light of inspiration. It is the currency that survivors gain, and they can use it to buy knowledges. We'll see your knowledges in the top left corner have a little hexagon with a price on them. That's where you spend your Lummy. Okay, next up, let's just see. You can see here, fighting arts and secret fighting arts are reduced to a maximum of 1 each. When you gain a fighting art instead, they will be vaultless. We will look at that right when we get into looking at the events. But I will just say, like, gaining a secret fighting art is pretty smooth. There's a little penalty for it, but it's not too bad. Gaining a fighting art is just an absolute pain. Very awkward and difficult to do. Up here, this is pretty normal, except you'll notice the Hunt XP track only has these 2. It doesn't have anything else filled in here. That's because each philosophy has its own aging track, own Hunt XP track with different levels on it. Some are quick to level up, some are slow, some are kind of like quick then slow. There's a few different patterns you'll see, but you'll fill in what your particular track is once you have it sorted out, once you know what your philosophy is. And then here we are. So your philosophy, you will have your name for it. You'll have a number of ranks in it, which go up to 4. You'll have a neuroses. This is given to you. You cannot get rid of it. It is a negative part of your entire survivor's whole thing. They've got to just deal with it. And then you've got a tenant knowledge, which you always have to have this knowledge. You've got room for a total of 3 knowledges. You see there's 2 more slots down here. Technically you can get beyond that with the help of other knowledges, but primarily you're looking at 1 fixed knowledge you're forced to use via your philosophy, and then 2 others that might be flavoured to match with it, or you may have picked them from other deck cards in the deck. By the way, this is a completely made up philosophy. the philosophy of education. I just wanted to put something here to highlight it, because then I can show like what happens if you have a number of observations, and you can say 4 observations in critical thinking, and as you make them you fill them in, and then that's when it will level up when you reach this. If it doesn't have any leveling up, you just wouldn't fill these in at all. There we go. So it's a pretty smooth system, but there is a couple of things to note, which is that one of the rules is if you miss an observation, you're supposed to just miss it. I do suggest if you're playing solo, you're learning, or you're playing like with just 2 players, maybe be a bit more forgiving of yourself with that, but with more than that, players really should be catching everything for sure. And yeah, as you see here, if you can't use footnotes, you cannot use knowledge. Okay, then we'll take a quick look at the settlement sheet, which I'll put down here. Don't worry about this timeline, but the key things here, as you can see, we got, this is for People's Dreamkeeper, so that's why you don't have to worry about it. We got first meal right here, that's important. And also, if we look, where are we? This page? Yes, this page here. So this allows us to back page, there we are. Sorry, I do apologize. This is where we track collective cognition. So basically, every time you have a victory against a given monster in a given level, you'll fill in a box. So like, get past the prologue, you've got 1, so you've got 1 collective cognition. Boom. You'll see beyond that we've got set points for certain other things, and if we're not ticking off a box, we're not progressing and gaining any more collective cognition. So once you've beaten your level 1 White Lion, Crimson Crocodile, boom, you've got another point, so you've got a total of 2, but if you fight another level 1, you're not getting any more points. You've got to fight a different monster. So you might go on then and fight a Screaming Antelope to get a 3rd point. But at this stage now, Nemesis monster hasn't turned up, it's Lantern Year 3, your choices are to either push against a level 2, which you're encouraged to do by this system, but you're not forced to, or you can chill and fight another level 1 again, but not gain any further collective cognition. So for each monster, we are encouraged to fight the level 1 once, the level 2 twice, and then the level 3 plus 3 times. Beyond that, we may fight it more, but we're not getting any more rewards. So your typical quarry monster, outside of the prologue one, is offering us a total of 6 spots that we can gain from. Is that 14 points? Hang on, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 points total. 15 for the prologue monster. Nemesis monsters are a little different. They're 3 flat per level, so beating that first Nemesis monster is very valuable. It's worth a lot of points, because I mean, if you just look at what it would be like, we've got 3 here, and say we didn't push ourselves to a level 2, we'll still be at 3, then we get to 6 by beating our Pariah or Butcher or Manhunter. What these do is over here, as you get certain numbers, you will mark these off and gain the given collective cognition rewards. So facets of power, pleasing plating, comprehensive construction. I'll have a skim through the actual deck, which includes some extra cards so we can talk about things. This is not exclusively the only ones. You get more collective cognition cards based on gaining extra expansions and things like that, and I'm sure the Campaigns of Death box will have a bunch more in it. So that's the main thing. You've also got tracking for a number of philosophies and knowledges, pretty decent. One sort of problem on the simulator, which I hope gets, how did I get over here? Which I hope gets fixed, is this particular, we just get back to the front page, this is all fixed in and we have no way to, we can add stuff here, you know, rivalry, whatever, we can put them on, but we can't change any of this, so there's just not as much customization as would be useful. This is awkward. It's something you have to work around on the simulator. In paper, you know, or on Scribe, you've got access to just blank setups, which makes it a lot easier. Just a quirk of the simulation at the moment, and if somebody from Team Death just happens for some reason to be watching this, could you give us some blank ones to fill in, please? Be great, thanks. Okay, let's just go through the settlement events. Before I do, there's a reason this card is here, which is I just wanted to briefly talk about this. So Again, to get back to torment and systemic pressure, you can also gain these temporary tokens, which function the same way, reducing the results on tables, except they'll go at the end of the showdown because they're tokens. Torment is softer than systemic pressure, and not just because of the whole way that the brain trauma table tends to buffer you against suffering the next brain trauma by giving you insanity, but also if you're really concerned about this, you can take accept darkness as your society principle, and that'll give you another +2 to brain trauma rolls, which will offset the first 2 torment any survivor has very cleanly. So that's just something I wanted to point out, and just to say that like overall torment is a bit softer than systemic pressure. So I'm going to jump to the relevant pages. So we're going to start by looking at first meal. Right, here we are. This is the artwork for first meal, and over here we have our whole walkthrough. This will be familiar, similar to returning survivors, but it is its own thing. The settlement will set up the so you have like a collective cognition deck that you set up, and you'll be gaining 1 collective cognition. Then you have the discourse section, where you build the philosophy deck. So as I've said, this will be 2 random tier 1s and a core and starting, which is survivalism at the moment, or if there's no core, it'll be 3 tier 1s and survivalism, and survivalism goes on top. It's going to be the first one that you draw. Your knowledge deck comes from the starting, which is darkness, despair, fear and hunger. Shout out to fear and hunger. That will be your starting knowledge deck, and then a survivor will ponder. They get to immediately jump to 2 hunt XP, which is nice, and they immediately adopt survivalism, and get tenacity, which you'll get shuffled in, and you'll go through the first steps of learning how survivalism works. So it's actually fairly straightforward to walk through this. Fairly clean to play. It feels incredibly familiar to just the whole returning survivors set up a settlement thing. So pretty smooth, and mostly just setting decks and following the instructions. Let's get to intimacy next, so we can see the changes there. Alright, here we are with the forever returning Inti and Macy, our intimacy survivors, enjoying a little meal and a romantic getaway next to what I hope is a nightmare tree, not a lonely one. So, intimacy. First big change, 2 consenting survivors. They don't care about whether they're male or female now. You don't have to worry about that. You can. That's one of the really nice things about Ark survivors, is you can pretty much hold whatever mix of population you like. Just remembering that male survivors are still prone to the manhunters. Is it manhunters? The manstealer. Hunt event, meaning that they could lose the ability to pass on any weapon proficiency. So female survivors still stay winning, but things are a little better. We have a arc birth roll, so like normal, this is going to be impacted by your birth principle if you have it. Protect the young, roll 2, take the highest, or choose, I can't remember which it is, it's been a while since I played Protect the Young. And then survival of the fittest, roll 2 dice, and have to take the lowest. We have these extra modifiers here, so if you've gained at least 1 collective cognition in the year, you get a +1 on the result. So this is a big old softening of the blow, because suddenly this is gone, and we only have this result on a 1, so that's like really good for even especially for survival of the fittest settlements. If we manage to gain at least 3, we get a grand feast, which affects some of the entries. Okay, so let's very briefly walk through the rolls. On a 1, they both march off into the darkness, they're dead. On a 2 or a 3, the newborn dies shortly after birth, and random parent also dies. Here's a fun little philosophical question for you. The newborn is actually born. So if you've taken survival of the fittest, surely they have a lifetime reroll. So surely they could spend their lifetime reroll on this chart to try and ensure their birth happens. There's no real definition I've found yet as to exactly when a survivor becomes a survivor mechanically. but it's kind of one of those fun things that I've just sort of thought about while doing all this. I was like, hey, that's a real, like, it's a kind of funny edge case. I can pretty much imagine the taste to just be like, no, but it is fun to think about. On a 4 or 5, +1 population. If you have a grand feast, the newborn gets +1 lummy. And we have the classic, if you've got bed innovated, the newborn also gets +1 strength. Nice to have. Bed's a good quality of life innovation we do want at some point because of its ability to cure certain broken injuries and have this bonus. 6, 7, 8 is +1 population. Both parents gain +10 survival. And if you have a grand feast, then the newborn gains a knowledge from one of their parents. So they inherit that from one of their parents, meaning we do want to pay attention to who our parents are for the children. Because we are kind of looking to try and pass on knowledges, useful knowledges to others. And this is a great way of doing that. On a 9, 10 or 11, we get a pair of healthy newborns. So we get +2 population. Grand feast is really turbocharged here. They immediately, you draw 5 knowledge cards from the knowledge deck, and they get to choose a knowledge from those, a different knowledge of each. Amazingly good. If you've innovated Hovel, then both children get +1 lummy. And then on a 12, you gain +1 population. The proud parents happily curl around their newborn prodigy, and the prodigy result here is the child's eyes shine with a wild hunger for knowledge, and you get to choose one of the following abilities for the newborn to have: astute psyche, discourse savant, or radiant presence. So astute psyche is whenever you're about to make an observation for knowledge, gain 2 instead. Amazingly good, especially dealing with some of the more awkward and annoying philosophies. Discourse savant, whenever you roll on the table ranking, you can choose your result. Again, amazing, just amazing. And radiant presence, when you return to survivor, gain +2 lummy. That's kind of okay, but you don't really want that until you've sort of got the settlement really rolling and most of the stuff is leveled up and you've got the knowledges unlocked that you want. The main trick with this is every year that you've beaten a nemesis monster is a really good year to be hammering for intimacy and population. You've gained 3 this year from that. So there's an excellent spot to be doing this. Same with beating level 3 quarry monsters as well. They're fantastic also. So just watch out for those windows and be like, okay, maybe we dial back on population this year because right after this fight we're going to go crazy for it with our innovations. The final settlement timeline event, I think. No, not settlement. Settlement event. Story event. I'm going to look at is Vaultless. Okay, here we are. We've got this gorgeous piece of art by the phenomenal artist Kyuyong. Hopefully I've pronounced that at least reasonably well. We'll be seeing more art from Kyuyong soon in some of the other videos. This is what happens when we gain a fighting art or a secret fighting art. We have to perform Vaultless. So, as you walk along the winding, high-walled fort path, you feel a border approaching. Explore the maze or press through the barrier. So, if an Arc Survivor would gain a fighting art, you can either choose to explore the maze or press through. When an Arc Survivor gains a secret fighting art, they gain its normal stuff for +1 systemic pressure or tournament and end this event. So that's the thing I was saying, where you're going to get your secret fighting art, and it's always easier to get secret fighting art specifically because they have very deterministic like triggers that cause you to get them. Everything else you're going to have to deal with this. So if you choose to explore the maze, then you roll a d10. On a 1 you suffer a death tension headache, and on a 2 to 9 you gain a lummy instead of the fighting art. And on a 10 you gain 2 lummy, and if you're at 30 plus collective cognition for your settlement, then you gain an observation in your tenant knowledge if you have one. Press through is how you try and get a fighting art when you're an Arc Survivor. You always get +1 systemic pressure no matter what, fail or succeed. On a 1 you gain a torment. On a 2 to 7 you just like get nothing at all, and on an 8 plus you manage to gain the fighting art and record it as normal. So 8, 9, 10, 30% chance. not great. And then we have this death tension headache. You have to roll on that. If you roll a 1 on explore the maze, on a 1 you suffer a head explosion, womp womp. On a 2 to 9 you must skip the next hunt to recover, and you lose all once per lifetime rerolls. So, you know, might just want to spend it there. Depends how you feel about the rolling the 1 on the reroll. And then on a 10 plus, you ascend the stars, your muscles burn, your bones ache, your skin disintegrates, a corpse sits in your way. It offers you a 10-sided rock. Again, once per lifetime reroll, and the corpse crumbles to dust. So, small chance of getting a replenish of a lifetime reroll. Vaultless is the main thing I was talking about when I said that your fighting arts are kind of almost eliminated by this. You're less likely to gain fighting arts in the first place, and then when you do get them, you've only got a 30% chance of keeping them, and if you don't keep them, you're still taking this penalty of the +1 systemic pressure. I am going to be honest, I think this system does need to kind of slightly change. Strain fighting arts in particular have really taken an absolute beating. You can't have them, basically. You know, you've got to fight for them every time, and I think strain fighting arts should genuinely have the same exemption that secret fighting arts have. But also, as I said, there's stuff like leader and rhythm chaser, things on innovations, things on seed patterns that are just kind of missing, and we can't get them, and it kind of makes parts of the game's experience tough to navigate through. So Vaultless, I think, is a super interesting concept. I genuinely think this limitation of 1 of each secret and normal fighting arts is perfect. You don't want more than that regardless, but I do think Vaultless is the big disappointment here in how that it's structured and working. I think this could have been better. You know, the 2 to 7 could have been spend all your lummy at least 1 or fail to get the the fighting art. You know, put a cost on it that a player has to make a decision about, not just say no on a 1 to 7. Kind of unfortunate, but we'll see. You know, I'm not here to tell what Team Death they should or shouldn't be doing, but I am here to observe when I feel like things are they could be better, and this is one of the only spots where I think there is a mechanical area that could be improved on. Right, so we're going to walk through all of this now from left to right, and we're going to start over here. These are the kind of additional things that get added into the game. So first of all, one of the basic hunt events gets replaced with this Ark Survivor hunt event, and you roll on the Ark Survivor hunt table. I'm not going to go through that here, but if there's enough people who ask for it, I'll do it through when I go through survivalism. This video is going to be long enough as it is already. But yeah, this just replaces one of them, and it's just a 1d10 table that you roll on, and I think it's quite a nice table, really. It's thematic and good. Then we've got here sculpture. Our original sculpture gets replaced with one that specifically works with knowledges, because the original one's working for fighting arts, so it makes sense. We have got here a updated version of romantic, because the original one is designed to work for fighting arts, where you draw 3 and choose 1 to keep. Romanticism is one of the systemic philosophy unlocks. So essentially, once you adopt romanticism, you gain the romantic philosophy. Barbaric doesn't have one, and in fact none of the other philosophies really have one, although technically cannibalism does sort of kind of have one, but not directly, sort of indirectly. I would really like to see in Campaigns of Death a philosophy for every single one of these different options. So if we go with collective toil, we get a collective toil philosophy. If we choose accept darkness, we get an accept darkness philosophy. We get one for survive the fittest, one for protect the young, one for graves, one for cannibalize, and one for romantic and barbaric. I think it would be really interesting to not just have this sort of like, well, do you want the extra philosophy? of Romantic, or do you just not want to get anything and not add more cards to your deck? That's kind of the choice that you have here, and that's sort of it. So I like Romantic a lot. Romantic's like one of my favourite philosophies, and one of my favourite innovations. It's just good because of how it gives you more options in both cases. We have a few replacements, so I'm not going to read the details of these because they are going to come up in future videos, but Murder becomes this Murder with a little symbol in the top, Skull Eater becomes this Skull Eater, and if you're anything like me, you'll spend the whole campaign hoping to draw this card, because this is my favourite card in the new thing, and Skull Eater was such a whatever previously, but I love it now. Briefly in respect to knowledges, you can have monster knowledges related to the quarries and possibly nemesis monsters in your campaign. This is Tactical Drag for the White Lion. I'm showing it simply because it has this theory text, which means it doesn't do anything mechanically and just some observations on it. Wanderers can also have, they all come with their own tenant knowledge which joins the deck. This is Candy's. Candy's one of the earliest Wanderers that can turn up, so that's why that's there. Again, just to show, you can see knowledge, tenet, Wanderer, Candy Cola, knowledge, monster, White Lion. So you should have one knowledge for each quarry monster in the game. I'm not going to go through all of the monster stuff now, don't want to spoil all of that. It'll be its own video. And then one for each Wanderer that you choose to have in, depending on the number of Wanderers you want to have. Okay, so observation deck. This is the observation deck, collective cognition deck. The collective cognition deck is where we get to level up our settlement. I talked about how the mechanics of that work already, so instead we're going to now walk through it. So this is a place where there will be spoilers of what is in this deck, but I'm not going to spoil the actual things unlocked particularly. There's about the first three I'll go through. The rest are going to sort of be left locked up, but yeah. So the very first one is Facets of Existence. This is when we get do the first meal, so, and build adopt the tier 1 philosophies. We've kind of been through that. Then we got Pleasant Plating, which gives us the stone plate innovation, and departing survivors get +1 survival for the first time it happens. We will look at what the stone plate does in a moment, because it's one of my favourite mechanics in the Gambler's Chest. Comprehensive Construction gives us the forum, that I'm going to go through here, and also when it's constructed, you get like +1 lummy whenever you gain a knowledge. You get like a rebate just on the year it's constructed to encourage you to use it. Then we've got here, these are monster based, so this is node 1. Then we have a communal larder with the butchery innovation that we're going to look at, because that's quite important as well. You see here we got that's Pariah for the node 1 nemesis, so we can assume we're going to see ones for Manhunter and the Butcher in the future. Also, you can remove starting knowledges from your knowledge deck at this point. We'll probably touch on that briefly when I go through the knowledges. There is arguments to keeping them and removing them, so it very much depends what you want to do. This here we got Sated Enlightenment, gain tier 2 philosophies. Then we have our node 2 quarry monsters and nemesis monster here, the Red Witches. Again, we can expect to see more for the other when Campaigns of Death arrives. Nutrition innovation, that is one we will look at briefly. Phoenix, Black Knight, so NQ3 and N3. This is our tier 3 philosophies. Then at the end here we got our NQ4, and maybe we'll get NN4s, maybe one day, maybe. And then finally we have culinary ingenuity for the supreme cuisine, which is something I won't look at in this video. I'll put it in with the monster knowledges when I do all the monster stuff. As for the timings of those, I've kind of left them out, but you can see on here. So Crimson Crocodile, that's when your node quarry 1s are. Smog Sing is where your node quarry 2s are. Phoenix Cuisine, that's where your node quarries 3 are. So this is here with the pacing. I would be having to draw each and every single card individually in order to be able to show that, because it's like a front-back system, as you can see. Right, so there was a few that we're going to go through, so if we just get past that, we've got, first of all, the stone plate innovation, which let's grab from the box. So, the stone plate gives us the ability to claim the clothed and satiated armor set bonus. That's this bonus here. It is +1 to all hit locations. It's a hybrid armor set that requires 3 pieces of armor. So as long as you have 3 pieces of armor, you get this set bonus. This is one of the best things that they introduced in the Gambler's Chest. And I'm going to be honest, if I wasn't playing with Ark Survivors, I'd still play with this card, because it's suddenly, not only does it make the beginning of the game a bit smoother, because you just need to buy 2 pieces of armor in order to get a set bonus. It's not a great one, but it is at least some extra protection. That's nice, but also it allows you to play mixed sets, because mixed sets they can be really satisfying when you take the different pieces of various sets and put them together to build something that's doing a unique kind of thing. I really enjoy mixing Screaming Antelope with Cycloid Scale Armor, for example. There's some neat stuff you can do there, but you miss out on this 6th card. Which is the main reason that you want an armor set, is you get this bonus card that affects your gear, well, affects your survivor, but doesn't go in the gear grid. So now we've got a clothed and satiated, gives us this nice little bonus, which I think is fantastic. At 5, we unlock the forum. I'll get onto that in a moment. It's right here. At 6, we can get past those. That's our ones. 8 is the butchery, which is right here. This is where we're now allowed to start doing weapon proficiency. So instead of picking weapon proficiency when you reach age 1, you now do it when you reach this unlock, which is collective cognition 8. So usually you're hovering around it after beating the first nemesis monster, maybe your first level 2 quarry monster after the first nemesis monster. So yeah, and you are very much rewarded for winning. You should be pushing to try and win and get these. And then I think the last one I wanted to just pull out and grab is it nutrition? Yeah, here we go. So nutrition comes in quite late, gives you the ability to, you get an extra forum knowledge on the forum, we'll look at that in a second, and gives you this ability to generate additional Lumi from good nutrition and have this once per lifetime huge boost. Well, it's very expensive. It's +1 accuracy, +1 strength, which is decent but not that much in the world of Ark Survivors, but here it is as well. And then just to briefly flick through, Phoenix, Black Knight, level 3 Philosophies, there is our King, and there is our Culinary Ingenuity. So very food focused, which is something we were always expecting. So yeah, it's pretty fantastic. So, forum. Once you have this, you will, during the settlement phase, shuffle your knowledge deck and deal out 3 cards face up here, a 4th one if you have nutrition. And any survivors can gain this by them paying the full Lummy cost listed on the card and putting the card back in the deck. So they have the ability to purchase these extra knowledges, and that's part of how you customize and construct your build. You don't get full, guaranteed locks of what you're going to get here, but you get 3 options, 4 options later on. And so that lets you sort of pick and choose, and it feels more like a rogue-like experience, which Kingdom Death is. Let's be honest, I think it's a rogue-like. It's not even a rogue-lite, it's a rogue-like board game, very much. And yes, I guess there's arguments for rogue-lite, but mostly rogue-like. And below here we've got a few other spots. So each one of these requires the number of Lummy spent by the number of hexagons that you see, and you have to have the collective cognition level to unlock the various abilities. Rigorous Study gives you an extra knowledge card face up, so if you have some Lummy to burn, you can try and draw some additional cards. There's no limit to the number of times you can use this here. Mentorship allows you to spend Lummy to turn into Hunt XP, which can be incredibly useful because when a survivor hits age 1, rank 2, they get to immediately adopt their philosophy, which is a nice thing to kick off, because otherwise they need to be pondering in order to get stuff sorted. That is on page 69 of the Gambler's Chest rulebook. But yeah, it's different to leveling up. So just to get it straight in your head, when you reach age milestone 1, you immediately go to philosophy book that's given philosophy that you've drawn. At higher levels, you have to be a returning survivor. Next up, we got the philosophy lecture. This is the next survivor to adopt a philosophy this lantern year draws an additional card to choose from. You can only do this once per survivor per lantern year, so 2 lummy to do that. If you're playing with the variants where you're like selecting or filtering your philosophy cards, this isn't quite so useful. But if you're playing like as you should be for your first time, just with the rules as written, very helpful. Just something worth remembering that you can, before performing mentorship or intimacy, if you have survivors via saga that immediately get to philosophy, this you can use this to set things up a bit and try and tailor your survivor even further. At 20, we have the group philosophy focus for 4 lummy. The next survivor to adopt a philosophy this lantern year chooses one from the deck. So multiple survivors can even contribute to pay this particular cost, not just one survivor. Limit once per lantern year, so for 1 survivor. Comments as per the previous one still apply here. Also, then at 50, we have for 4 lummy ancient wisdom. Nominate a survivor to gain in knowledge from a retired survivor. Multiple survivors may contribute to pay this cost. Really strong, because what happens is once your survivors have kind of done their full philosophy arc, if they've retired and they're still kicking around in the settlement, this is the point where they become valuable to you, because they represent sculptures in quotation marks that can hand off very good knowledges, because they will have pushed those knowledges or have very strong knowledges as a retirement point. So this is another way you can tutor, guarantee, secure what you're after, alongside the intimacy bit of them being parents. So if you miss there, you can try and achieve it here for 4 lummy. That's not that much. Round 50 collective cognition, it really isn't. And if you're pushing hard for your collective cognition, 50 is not a difficult number to get to at a reasonable length of time. Okay, again I've clicked and shot over here, I don't know how that happened. So let's just get over to, we'll do this last. We just got these to look at. So first of all, here are the categories, just to show them. So starting looks like this, the little S here. Core looks like this. I don't know if they're all going to have a blue dot, I assume so. So that's dreamism. Then we've got our systemics here. So currently we have romanticism, Maoism and homicidalism. I'll be covering all those individually in the future. They are the, I guess I want to call that, it's ochre, isn't it an ochre? Yeah, kind of an ochre colour. And here we are. So our tier 1, we've got 4 for tier 1. This is the category I want to see more of. Tier 1's like anything. You want more node 1 monsters, node 2 monsters. You want more tier 1 philosophies for the same reason. I really want to get up to like about 7 or 8 of these would be fantastic. Then we've got our tier 2s. So we've got 5 already. There's another one, Gatherism, that isn't on the simulator yet. This is the most engaging portion. There's almost not a single one that I would call bad. I'm looking at you, Optimism, and I'm really close. They're all super interesting. They're all very different degrees of powerful. They offer alternative different stuff. Gourmandism, regalism and verminism are, I think, my favourite philosophies, along with fascism and maybe lanternism. But this is the sweet spot. This is where the really good stuff for me all lives. And then at the top end we've got 2. We've got ambitionism and champion. I think ambitionism's really, really good. Engaging and really enjoying, and championing is a tier 3 philosophy that you can adopt. We'll talk about that in the future. Here we have our book. So if the first thing you do is adopt survivalism, and you can see here we have a bunch of stuff on the side to help us like understand how it's all working. And then over here, this is our first page. It gives us our neuroses, our tenet, our Hunter XP track, and explains how tenet works. So I will go through this in detail when I do the survivalism video next. I'm not going to read it all out here or discuss it, especially because I haven't written the notes down, so I'd have to manually count these because I can never quite remember how many this is. this is the reason I want this the survivalism book. Sometimes you have these special divergent philosophy things that you can do, and survivalism is the one that we have right now. And then beyond that, we have our rank tables. So this will be the first one you roll on when you get there. I'm not going to flick through the rest of the book. That is for the survivalism video, but I wanted to showcase a book. We have a bunch of them. They are located all here. We got a quirk in the simulator that luck goes in here, but all the other small Wanderer books do not fit in that spot. They're actually occupying spots on my shelf right now. Which, hang on, you can see in there. That's supposed to be where rule books go, but they occupy those spots. I hope that gets fixed soon, because I've actually got some rule books sat in here because they're not up there because there's no room, because these tiny books have taken the spaces. It's kind of funny. It'll get fixed. It's not a big deal. Yeah, so the last thing we're going to do now is we're going to go through our starting philosophy deck. Let's pull this away from everything else, pop it down here, and go through it like this. So this is where we can break down and talk about how a knowledge is structured, how it works, and talk about these. So when you're looking at a knowledge, the things you're trying to understand is what is its thematic and mechanical focus, how effective is it at doing that, how much does it cost, and how difficult is it to rank up, because some of them will just be terrible from the very start in that they just don't do anything, or perhaps even have a negative attached to them, and darkness is a great example of this. So darkness is, I guess, canonically Urza's starting knowledge, because she's the one who's pictured in it. It costs 0 to have. It is darkness 1, so we know that it levels up. It says there's something out to get you, and you have +1 torment. So as long as you have this specific darkness 1 knowledge, you have +1 torment. And it explains how torment works. Each time we suffer brain damage, we gain an observation. So we have got here a total of 5 observations. It will level up. So while that's 5 observations, brain damage, we're talking about suffering brain damage in any way, shape or form. So that could be on the hunt, that could be intimidate actions, it could be settlement event cards, whatever story events, whatever it's doing. Each time we suffer brain damage, that instance of it, we gain an observation. So it's faster to level up than you'd think. It's not the fastest of these though, but it is pretty swift. Once leveled up, it becomes darkness 2. We know this is the end point for it because we have our full picture rather than anything segmented with observations. So this is Urza's full acceptance of darkness. It's now a 3-point lummy, 3 lummy knowledge. You let the darkness in, you add +1 to your brain trauma roll results. These starting knowledges are not super strong, but they're okay. Darkness is something I'm tempted to keep in the deck when I get the option to remove them with was it butchery, because of that +1 to brain trauma roll results. If I've not accepted darkness, this can be helpful, especially if I am trying to power through and get extra fighting arts, because that table occasionally dumps torment on you. This is a little bit of mitigation for that, but it's not super great. I think it's overpriced at 3. I really feel like this is like a 1 or a 2 lummy, really 1 lummy knowledge. So overall it's not great, and it's often chopped out of people's knowledge decks when they get the chance, and I can't really disagree with that. Next up we have Alistair's Despair. This is pretty fast to level up, 0 cost, theory, so no rules text here. Its observation is when you suffer a brain trauma, gain 1 observation, and that just advances it immediately to Despair 2, which is asking if nightmares are real, then are you a living nightmare? And whenever you depart, you gain +1 insanity, and then again, when you suffer a brain trauma, you gain +1 observation, 3 observations, it advances. At Despair 3, it is now costed at 1 lummy to buy, because you will have this on a survivor already. Nightmares are real, and dreams are the wisdom of the dead. While you sleep, they fill you with guidance. When you depart, gain +2 insanity. This is not a super powerful knowledge by any stretch of the means at all, but early on it's nice to have some insanity gains in order to help you out, especially if you're fighting like the Crimson Crocodile. This is pretty decent on that front. It does often get axed from the deck though once you have the opportunity, because a thin knowledge deck is a happy knowledge deck. We've got Lucy's. Lucy is Fear. She's part of the Fear and Hunger duo. So, zero cost theory. Whenever you suffer damage, you gain +1 observation. This is very easy to get done in the prologue fight. That's just 3 lots of damage. That, you know, and you're often having to soak and take those hits anyway. So often this will get done, if not in the first prologue fight, then definitely in the first Lantern Year if you're taking Lucy out. And it evolves into the 1 cost Fear 2. When a monster targets you, you may spend 1 survival to suffer the Flea Brain trauma limit once per showdown. This is the one I actually keep in most of the time. I think this is the strongest of them. Basically, on a survivor who you want to not get hit, a damage dealing range survivor, a support survivor, this is boom, you knock yourself down, you move full move towards the nearest edge of the board, you gain 1d5 insanity if I remember correctly. That can cancel a monster's attack almost entirely. Just like a once per showdown, just the monster chases after someone and can't get near. And it is when you get targeted. It doesn't even give a damn about flow steps. You don't. This isn't like Dash. This is better than Dash on that particular front, and that's the reason I keep it in. Is this one genuinely I think is quite strong and flexible. And even if when you get far enough down in the campaign, when you get nearer the higher numbers, I can live with having Fear still sitting in the deck, because occasionally I do want it on a support survivor or similar. So yeah, this is my top pick of the bunch. And finally, we've got the other half of the Funga duo. This is Zachary's Hunger. 0 cost at start level. Your body is filled with tiny monsters that are eating you from the inside. You have +1 systemic pressure. This is pretty bad. This is the reason why Zachary doesn't make it through as many prologue showdowns as others, because you're more likely to take those severe injuries when fighting the prologue White Lion, and poor Zachary takes worse ones. But if you survive, then it advances during the aftermath. 1 observation, boom, done, advance. It becomes Hunger 2, which again is 0 cost. You must eat monsters to feed the monsters inside. When you depart, gain +1 survival. Really nice to have early on. Departing survival is tough to come by. Usually only 1 or 2 survivors have it available at the end of Lantern Year 1. This means you've got a survivor who will be gaining a survival if they depart. That's really nice to have. And then finally, on its full level, it's the 1 cost Hunger 3. With extreme focus and controlled hum, you direct your appendix to secrete a unique gut bacteria that allows your intestines to super absorb nutrients. When you depart, gain +2 survival. Yeah, perfectly fine, but I will cut this out once I get to Lantern Year. When I get to the butchery point where I can cut it out. Also, this observation is kind of tough to do. You have to consume in order to trigger it. You don't get a lot of consume gear very early on, so you're kind of relying on hunt events, or maybe like finding acanthus or vermin to push this forward. So it's not as reliable to develop as others. It's often stuck at Hunger 2 for me by the time I have the option to axe it, because of how slow it is to develop. So if I was going to tier list these, I think Fear 2 is the best of the bunch. I would put Darkness 2 at second place, because it is technically tough for the brain. Despair at 3, and I think Hunger is the weakest of the bunch, but it's perfectly fine at Hunger 2. I'm fine with it being at that, you know. And Fear ultimately is the main one I will keep, and I will sometimes think about keeping Darkness too. So that is it. That's everything on our introduction to Arc Survivors and Philosophies and everything. Next time we will come back with Survivalism, and I will cover then all the tier 1s after that, then all the tier 2s, then I'll do the Dreamism and Systemic ones, and then I'll end with the tier 3s. I'll also cover Gatherism when it comes on the simulator, and anything else that arrives I'll add to this series. It'll have a playlist on my YouTube YouTube channel, so you can like click through them, and it should have a link to the playlist at the end of each of the videos as well. But that's it. That's everything. And my final thoughts are, I think this is a really, really good system. I was concerned about it when I first heard before it arrived. I was wrong about that. I'm happy to be wrong about that. I really love Ark Survivors. I don't see myself going back to playing with fighting arts by themselves, except when I'm teaching people how to play the game at first, because if they're not role players or used to heavy games, this might be a bit much for them. Otherwise, forget about it. And my only real disappointment in the system as a whole is I would like Vaultless to have a second pass through, to do something more, to let fighting arts really strain fighting arts, and the fighting arts that we need for seed patterns and similar, just another pass on those, that kind of stuff. It would be nice to have it gel properly, because Ark Survivors is clearly a system bolted onto another system, and it's not quite fully integrated yet. But overall, fantastic. Really excited to talk about the rest of them, and I hope you're excited as well. Thank you so very much for listening. Thank you to my patrons who support these videos, and happy hunting.